Good morning, crime community. Still reading out Poisoner in Chief, Chapter 6. Any effort to tamper with this project, MK Ultra, is not permitted. A bird cage disappears into thin air along with the bird inside. Wilted flowers burst into bloom. A paper napkin is ripped into pieces. The pieces are scattered as they float toward the floor. They join back together. Olives are transformed into lumps of sugar. Rarer feats follow. The Cantonese card trick, the curious handkerchief trick, the multiplying thimble trick. John Mulholland, like Mulholland Drive, like Dead Man's Curve, vinyl community. John Mulholland, mystified and amazed crowds in dozens of countries following the death of the famous magician Harry Houdini. His mentor, Mulholland, I never knew John Mulholland was Harry Houdini's mentor. Mulholland became America's most celebrated magician. Throngs packed grand auditoriums like Radio City Music Hall to watch him do the impossible. Society grandees hired him to astonish guests at private parties. His circle of friends and admirers included Orson Welles, which I worked for his associate, Gary Greer, Jean Harlow, who lived in the Paul Byrne house. Who else lived in there? Yeah, it's in all the books, isn't it? Dorothy Parker. I had a letter here from Dorothy Parker. I think they stole it. Harold Lloyd, Jimmy Durante. I met his son in Colonel Parker's office. We did a little skit together. And Eddie Cantor. For more than 20 years, he edited The Sphinx. We're talking about John Mulholland now. A professional journal for conjurers, illusionists, and prestidiginators. His library on these and related subjects contained more than 6,000 volumes. After his death, the magician David Copperfield bought it. Mulholland wrote nearly a dozen books himself, with titles like The Art of Illusion, The Quicker Than the Eye. He performed for the King of Romania, the Sultan of Sulu, and Eleanor Roosevelt. When not writing or performing, he devoted himself to unmasking fraudulent spiritualists and psychics, often by dramatically revealing their tricks. His mastery of technique and movement was unsurpassed in the world of magic. The thousands who paid Mulholland to baffle and delight them were not only admirers. On April 13th, 1953, the day MK Ultra was formally set into motion, Sidney Gottlieb was in New York to meet him. There was a wonderfully conceived collaboration. Gottlieb's team knew how to correspond poisons and concentrate them into poison pills, capsules, sprays, powders, and drops. Intrepid CIA officers of their agents could bring one of these potions into the close proximity of a target. The final challenge remained, training officers to administer the poison. Mulholland was the master of what he called the psychological of deception. He was also haunted by the fact that rheumatic fever had disqualified him from military service in World War I. Is that what he had with Gottlieb, a cleft foot, and Dulles? Sounds like it. Among his writing are profiles of magicians who used their skills to serve their countries, including Jean Eugene Robert Houdin, who helped suppress an uprising in Algeria by persuading tribesmen that French magic was stronger than theirs, and Jasper Maskelyne, who designed large-scale illusions to disguise British troops positioned in North Africa during World War II. Mulholland was yearning for a way to do patriotic service. Gottlieb gave him the chance. John was an American and he loved his country, and the fact that he worked for an intelligence agency run by our government made him very proud, a friend recalled years later, and he said yes because his government asked him to. During his meeting with Gottlieb, Mulholland agreed to teach CIA officers how to distract victims' attention so drugs could be given to them without anyone's noticing. Our interest was in the sleight of hand practices and the art of surreptitious delivery or removal, Gottlieb later said. Those are the trained became pretty good at it. In some ways, their training was a welcome relief for more serious matters. Gottlieb also asked Mulholland to consider writing a manual of which sleight of hand practices could be codified for officers unable to attend training sessions in New York or Washington. A few days later, Mulholland wrote that he had given the subjects were discussed considerable thought and wanted to proceed. In this and the other reports to Gottlieb, Mulholland used a series of euphemisms. CIA officers were performers or operators. The toxins they were handled were material, the victims a spectator, and the act of poisoning a procedure or trick. His manual would adapt the magician's stage show devised to fool audiences who paid to be fooled to the world of covert action, where deception were for darker purposes. Upon receiving this letter, Gottlieb wrote a memo for his file describing the deal he had struck. Mulholland would produce, in the form of a concise manual, as much pertinent information as possible in the fields of magic as it appears to covert activities. Mr. Mulholland seemed well qualified to execute this study. He had been a successful performer of all forms of prestidigitation and the further study of psychology and deception. One item in Mulholland's background might have led to suspicion of deviancy and prevented his employment. In 1932, he married a woman who had been courting for 8 years, but on the condition that she accept his continuing relationship with another longtime girlfriend. She agreed, explaining afterward that Mulholland was so much of a man, one woman's love could not satisfy him. Few of the CIA were that open-minded. Paul Gaynor, director of the Security Research Staff, wrote a memo warning of Mulholland's sexual proclivities. He had not been so uniquely qualified for his proposed job. His unorthodox marital arrangement, which had made no attempt to hide, might have led security officers to block his hiring. Under the circumstances, however, Gottlieb and Allen Dulles, one of a quintessential outsider, the unusual personal habits of his own, and the other a relentless adulterer, choose to overlook it. On May 5th, Mulholland received a nearly typed letter informing him that his book proposal had been accepted. The letterhead said, Kempferall Associates, listed a post office box as its address and was signed by one Sherman Grilford. This was a modest disguise, certainly one that Mulholland could penetrate. The name of the fictitious company was easily decipherable, Kempferall, C.A. So was Gottlieb's pseudonyms, for which he used his own initials. The project was outlined in your letter of April 20th, have been approved by us, and you are hereby authorized to spend up to $3,000 in the next months in the execution of this work. He wrote, please sign the enclosed receipt and return it to me. After these formalities were completed, Mulholland was asked to sign a pledge acknowledging that he was entering in a confidential relationship and that he would never divulge, publish, nor reveal, either by word, conduct, or by any other means, such information or knowledge as to indicate above, unless specifically authorized to do so. He agreed. The pledge was countersigned by Gottlieb's deputy chemist named Robert Lashbrook. Mulholland began canceling appointments and postponing freelance writing assignments. He even gave up his longtime job as the editor of the Sphinx. That allowed him to concentrate on turning his mastery of magic into a tool for spies. And as deadline approached, Mulholland submitted a draft to his manual along with a letter to Sherman Grifford, saying that he wished to refine it further. Dear Sherman, he wrote, this is a memo in regard to the extension of the manual on trickery. The manual, as it now stands, consists of the following 5 sections. 1. Underlying bases for the successful performance of tricks in the background of psychological principles by which they operate. 2. Tricks with pills. 3. Tricks with loose solids. 4. Tricks with liquids. 5. Tricks whereby small objects can be contained secretly. The manual requires 2 further sections. I believe that properly to devise the required techniques and devices and to describe them in writing would require 12 working weeks. This is all John Mulholland's work. Gottlieb replied that these ideas sounded excellent to us. When he wrote a memo to his titular superior, Willis Gibsons, Chief of the Technical Services Staff, reporting that under a previous Subproject 4, a manual was prepared by Mr. Mulholland, dealing with the application of the magician's art to convert activities such as the delivery of various materials to unwilling subjects. Subproject 19 will involve the preparation of 2 additional sections to the manual. These are 1. Modified or different methods and techniques to use if a performer is a woman, and 2. Methods and techniques that can be used where 2 or more people can work in collaboration. Over the next year, Mulholland produced several drafts of this manual, which he called Some Operational Applications of the Art of Deception. I practice at the art of deception. The purpose of this paper is to instruct the readers so they may be able to perform a variety of acts secretly and undetectably, he wrote in his introduction. The short here are instructions in deception. This manual was presumed to be lost or destroyed. A copy unexpectedly surfaced in 2007, making it the only full-length MKUltra document known to have survived intact. It was published with an apt title, The Official CIA Manual of Trickery and Deception. As with everything Mulholland wrote for the CIA, it is presented in stage language so that even if it fell into the wrong hands, it might appear to be a manual for performers, not poisoners. In this manual and at training sessions for CIA officers, Mulholland stressed one principle. Contrary to the popular cliche, he insisted, the hand is not quicker than the eye. Mulholland taught that the key to magic tricks is not to move the hand quickly, but to distract attention so the hand can do the work. Once a performer understood this principle, he or she could learn to administer poison without detection. Mulholland's manual explains the use of misdirection, including ways an agent can flick a pill into a victim's drink while distracting him by lighting a cigarette. It tells how capsules can be hidden in and then ejected from wallets, notebooks, or paper pads, how venom can be concealed in a ring, how toxic powders can be dispensed from an eraser cavity or a lead pencil, how female agents can hide poison in brocade beads and use the handkerchief as a mask for a liquid container, and how, thanks to advancing aerosol technology, it can become possible to spray a liquid on a solid such as bread without either the action or the result being noticed. Gottlieb had assembled an imperative array of poisons. With this manual, Mulholland gave him ways to deliver them. He turned highly developed techniques of stage magic into tools of covert action. The fact that he was able to contemplate such thing is emblematic of the unique moment in American history, wrote John McLaughlin, the former deputy director of the CIA, who was himself an amateur magician, in an introduction to the official manual, the CIA Manual of Trickery and Deception. American leaders during the early Cold War felt the nation essentially threatened by the adversary who appeared to have no scruples. Mulholland's writing on delivering of pills, potions, and powders was just one example of research carried out back in the fields as diverse as brainwashing and paranormal psychology. Many such effects that seem bizarre today are understandable only in the context of those times. We're going to quit here and leave it for another section. I want to say thank all to the crime community, and even the vinyl members are out there watching it. You know about John Mulholland, don't you? Have a nice day, and God bless the children.